Good morning and happy spring. Thank you for joining us today for today's 30 and 30 session, Necessary Bricks for Building Your Personal Brand. We are thrilled to have you here and we hope everyone is well. So my name is Amy Goldstein. I'm the founder of Grace and Allen, a search and advisory firm that focuses on legal recruiting and career coaching services. I graduated from Tulane Law School and from Rutgers College.
Good morning, I'm Randy Rosenblatt. I'm the founder of Upward Stride, a business development, training, consulting, and coaching firm that works with attorneys and law firms on how to strengthen relationships and take their business to the next level. I got my JD and my MBA from Tulane, and I got my undergraduate degree from the University of Michigan. You can feel free during our session today to type any questions in the chat box. We'll try to address them as we get to that, as we see them. If we don't get to them, we can certainly turn to them at the end. If you do have a question, if you could just do us a favor and put a Q in front of it so we can notice that it's a question rather than just commentary, and we will go from there. So just to take you through our agenda, we're going to talk about what is a personal brand. We're then going to go through the blocks of brand building, followed by a discussion about being confident and building confidence and diving in a bit deeper there about how to identify your audience, prepare an elevator pitch, and create a digital presence. Then once you have this brand, we'll talk about spreading the word, and then we'll open up the floor to a more general Q&A.
So we're going to start with, what is a personal brand? Your brand is what distinguishes you from your competition. It's your story. Your brand is what earns you your reputation. Your brand is not what you tell people. It is what you show people over time. And we all have a brand, whether you're a solo practitioner, an attorney with a global firm, in-house counsel, the founder or employee at a company, inside or outside the legal space. We all have one. And since we do, we need to cultivate our image. And thankfully, we have the ability to do that both online and in person. We want to support who we are and what we do well and show that in the most positive light so that we can develop opportunities at our own organizations, and that we can also capture business from potential clients. So we want to take advantage of the ability to influence the narrative. And the way to do that is strategically and thoughtfully paint the picture that determines how others perceive us. And that's going to be our focus today. Jeff Bezos, Amazon's founder, famously said, "Your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room." The bottom line is people are going to form opinions about you. And so it is imperative to take advantage of the opportunity to influence the narrative. So make the investment now so that the impression that people have is the impression that you want them to have. And while there are many arms to your brand, it is still a single brand. Online, social media, whether it's LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, the way you present in person, it all contributes to one brand regardless of the medium.
So the blocks of brand building, before you take any steps to kind of actively build your brand, think about, like Amy referenced, what do you want people to say when describing you when you're not in the room? Who are you? What makes you unique? What is your value add to their world, to the situation? What do you want to be known for? When your prospective client needs X, are you the one who they're going to call? Are you the one who they're going to think of? And once you've formulated the perception that you hope to convey, you want to establish an awareness of how you actually are perceived. You want to know what do people think about you? What are they saying about you? So Google is a fantastic place to start. Google yourself, know what, and remind yourself what is out there digitally. Ask people you know, right? Do kind of this intake, personally and professionally. Ask them to share perceptions. It's really hard to be objective about ourselves. So asking other people will help you kind of craft this story that already exists. You might hear things that give you different perspectives. It can be skills of yours that you undervalue or didn't realize you have, or it can be constructive criticism of qualities of which you were unaware or try to ignore. And either way, it's just important to internalize the feedback and to determine how to use it moving forward. If you're part of a large organization or a large firm, if they have a 360 review process that you're a part of, that's a great way to receive anonymous feedback. Once you have that feedback and you've internalized it and analyzed it as best you can, ask and consider whether your desired perception aligns with how you're actually perceived. Assuming not, you want to start working towards creating the elements that support the image that you want people to have about you. So if it is determined that you're too cursory, maybe you want to make some efforts to provide more detail. Or if you tend to get too far into the weeds on certain things, make sure you consider the big picture. If you are viewed as someone who's generally informal at times when you shouldn't be, consider becoming a bit more formal in those situations. Or if you tend to be formal when people want you to be more laid back, maybe try to connect a bit more on that personal level. If you get feedback that you're abrasive in inappropriate situations, look for ways to approach issues in a more supportive way. And if you're too casual about getting things done, maybe recognize deadlines and realize the importance. So one thing to note here is we don't want to, and we're not suggesting adjusting in response to every single piece of feedback you get. You're taking each piece and creating a larger picture of what your general perception is. So if everyone says that you are professional and appropriately formal in the right situations, and one person in your kind of intake says you're not, it's an outlier, right? So just put this all into perspective. And then also be mindful of how you want to adjust based on the environment. So you might get feedback at home that doesn't apply to work, and you might get feedback at work that doesn't apply to home. So just take each piece of feedback within the environment in which it's given, and then see if it crosses over, and then work from there to kind of build that perception as you want it to be.
So next we're going to talk about being confident so that you can build confidence. Right? How do you feel about the image and the message that you're putting out there? And also, how do other people feel about you? Building trust and confidence in your audience is absolutely key. And the truth is, in addition to what you say, how you say it is just as important. You need to present with confidence, because if you aren't sure of yourself, others will sense that. Randy and I have both been following Amy Cuddy, who is a social psychologist and Harvard professor who's done a lot of talking on this topic. One of the most popular TED Talks of all time is Amy's on the subject. I encourage you to look for it. And she's also written a book on presence. And the bottom line, the main takeaway is that how we present is not only incredibly important, but also sometimes even more so than what we actually say. So keep that in mind first and foremost. And when you are on Zooms, ensure that your facial expressions, and this is true for in-person too, we've gotten so used to this Zoom world, but sometime soon, hopefully we'll be meeting actually face-to-face. You need to be present. Are you engaged, showing that you're interested, not looking at your phone and checking messages or whatever it is, and also reflecting how the conversation is. Are you partaking in a conversation that's serious or joyful? And we do have to make a little bit more effort when we're on the camera to make sure that we are showing appropriate reactions and engagement, and also that we're not showing annoyance either about what's happening during the Zoom, during meetings sometimes that run too long, or somebody goes off on a tangent or whatever it is, or also because we have a lot going on at home that can be a distraction. It is super important to stay focused. And also to dress appropriately. We've been doing this for a year. Dressing for the circumstances, which is a business setting generally, is very important to your brand. It's about image. And if you aren't sure, it is always better to step up your appearance. You will never be faulted for that, as opposed to being too casual. Also, I referenced it a little bit before, be present. Don't be checking your emails, have your camera on, show that you are fully engaged. And make sure that your Zoom is set up right, even though, again, we've been doing this for a while. We often see people who are kind of too far back, or kind of in a corner, or whatever it is. Like, take the time beforehand to jump on and make sure that you are presenting the image that you want to present. Another thing to be mindful of in terms of presentation is verbal tics. The ums, the okays, the likes are distracting and take away from our message, and we're not always aware of them. Just a very quick story. When I first started practicing, I was in administrative court almost every day, and one of the court reporters pulled me aside and said, "Do you want me to keep the okays on the record?" I had no idea what she was talking about, and she proceeded to show me the transcript, and every single sentence I started with the word okay. I was using it as a space filler so that there was no pause. And needless to say, I said, no, please remove them. But that gave me that awareness that I truly didn't have. And so it is something to be aware of for yourself, but also you can ask as you're having conversations with people who you are comfortable with to make sure that you're not missing anything. Another trick for that would also be you can walk your fingers out as you speak. If you do find that you are using space fillers, if you tap your finger for each word, that will help you. And same, you can do a foot tap to just kind of keep yourself moving at a reasonable pace and hopefully break those habits. Another thing that's super important is to be prepared. We gain confidence from knowing what we are going to be contributing to the extent that we can, what the context for the conversation is. And not only does that show that we care, it also shows respect for the person that we are speaking with.
Just following up on one thing Amy mentioned, in terms of Amy Cuddy, if you're on Clubhouse right now, she is doing a Tuesday night room, I guess it's called, where she kind of brings that Harvard class that she teaches to the Clubhouse community. And there's a lot of good information in there. It's audio, it's not video, it's iPhone only right now. But if you're able to ever jump on, I believe it's at 6 Eastern, and just follow her on Clubhouse and you'll get the alerts as to when it's popping up. But she has a lot of really good and useful information that really travels across multiple, really anything you do in terms of a profession or personally as well. So in terms of identifying your audience, and Amy and I have talked about this before, if you've attended other presentations we've given, as you build your brand, you want to really understand who your audience is and to whom you're trying to appeal generally. So call it your avatar. And while there may be many, if you are an employment litigator, you want to talk to employment counsel in-house, you might want to talk to CEOs, you might want to talk to CFOs, you may also work on the employee side, you may have many, but work to pick one and then really dive in deep to who that person is. Where do they live? What do they look like? What's their morning routine? What podcasts did they listen to? What books did they listen to? Where do they hang out? All of kind of like this imaginary friend idea, kind of create this image in your head. And then when you figure out where that person is, that's essentially where you want to be. And when I say where they are, sure, we could talk about rooms and conferences and networking groups and whatnot, but also where they spend their time, right? Do they spend their time reading certain periodicals? Do they spend their time listening to certain podcasts? And those are the types of things that you want to be a part of, because then you will be able to get to your audience. As you identify your audience, you also want to give thought to the messages that you want to convey and how they relate to your brand and what your audience might be interested in. So if your brand is one way and your audience is focused on something else, you need to work to kind of align those two things. Because, if you're targeting employment litigators and you're holding yourself out as an IP lawyer who dabbles in employment, the alignment is kind of missed. So make sure that as you build your brand, there is alignment with this avatar. In talking to this one avatar, you're talking to many of the people you want to target, but it helps the thought process if you focus on this one, because otherwise you end up a little bit scattered trying to talk to many. So the higher ROI I would suggest is if you create this focus so that your content is really focused and can then kind of build out from there.
And also, just to piggyback on that, one last point is to make sure that you're doing it with intent, as Randy said, and know your audience, but also it is okay to shift. As we go through our careers, there are changes and pivots, and if you keep forcing your message to the audience and it doesn't feel natural or it's not accomplishing what you're looking to do, it is okay to change that avatar and look towards a new audience. So your elevator pitch. We spoke a minute or two ago, a few minutes ago, about presenting confidently. Being prepared is the key with your elevator pitch. Take the time to develop a few lines that you can use as you're speaking, and also in a written version for your online presence, so that you have a consistent message, but also something that you're very comfortable with. Tweak it and practice it so that when you are using it, it flows naturally and again is comfortable for you to put out there. And similar, we were just talking about avatars. Think about who your audience is for your pitch. This is definitely part of what Randy was getting at. What problem do you solve for them? And what is the benefit of them working with you? Why you is the question that you should answer. And you do need to make it memorable. It is so hard for all of us to pay attention. How often have you met someone and as soon as they say their name, you didn't even hear it? So something that will hook people and capture their attention is very important to the message of your elevator pitch. And you also want it to be engaging. Ideally, it's something that gives them just enough information that will lead them to ask you some questions and ideally further conversation. And I talked about shifting with your avatar if you feel like it's not quite lining up with who your audience should be. It's also okay to change your message depending on your audience. And you can have more than one pitch depending on who you are. Randy's example of having an IP attorney who does some employment, you can have two different messages, one for your core IP audience and then also for that employment angle that you're looking to cover as well, just as an example. And also whether you're searching for a job or developing business, again, your purposes change, and it's okay for your messages to change with that as well, as long as you keep in mind that there should be a consistent thread.
The other thing about your elevator pitch, I once worked with a construction lawyer, real estate lawyer, who his pitch was something like, I work in the dirt. And it just always caused people to say, like, laugh and then kind of ask more. So creating something a little bit kind of catchy and funny that then drives the conversation a little bit is one way to approach it as well. The only thing to be a little bit weary of is you do want to convey what you actually do. So if there's not really time for conversation and it's kind of a quick one-off type thing, maybe have both prepared. But it's kind of a door that opens, right? You'll then have an opportunity, hopefully, to give a longer explanation at a later time. So as Amy had mentioned earlier on, we have one brand. And while most people prefer to keep some distinction between their personal lives and their professional lives, it all blends together, right? If you're interviewing or you're pitching business, those people on the other end of your pitch or the other end of the interview, they're not saying, wait, this is personal. We're not going to check their Facebook. We're not going to check their Twitter. We're not going to check their Instagram, right? They're looking at everything that they can. And in truth, if you do it right, it's a good thing. So employers are Googling you. Anything you say or write or put on social media, it can be found. So don't think private means that you have things truly hidden. So especially if you are in a position where you're looking for a job or you are pitching business or you're a revenue generator, just keep this all in mind as you kind of review all your social media platforms. Your pictures, your comments, your likes, the organizations you support, your political views, the language you use, any blogs you're a contributing editor to or that you've created, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, it's all discoverable and it all creates an impression. This is not to say that you shouldn't be engaging and that you shouldn't share your views. It's just to make sure you're aware that other people are seeing those things and you need to be comfortable with the fact that they are. So whatever choices you make in how you present and how you engage on social media, just consciously know that if it does impact the perception people have of you, so make sure it is aligned with the perception that you want them to have.
So if you were with us in January, we did a session on rockstar LinkedIn profiles. If you aren't on LinkedIn in a meaningful way yet, now is the time. Just do it today. New clients, potential employers, referral sources, they are all on LinkedIn and going there to meet you. And so you and your brand need to be reflected online. And since your profile is key to amplifying your brand, we're going to highlight just a few places that you should keep an eye on because they should evolve over time and you should consider updating them on a regular basis to the extent there are any shifts in your messaging. So the first thing is your photo. You might not need to change it every year, but you should take a look at it and make sure that it still reflects who you are. And sometimes it's a matter of a dramatic hairstyle change or hair color. I'm just using that as an example, but anything that makes it so that your picture does not reflect who the person will see when they are face to face with you, you should update it. And the other thing is to make sure that you're smiling. You are much more approachable with a smile. And so if your picture is a serious looking picture, I would encourage you to consider taking a new shot with a smile. The next thing is your headline. We talked about that it shouldn't just be your title and your employer because that doesn't say anything about you. What your headline should do is say what you do and what distinguishes you in your space. So if you're an employment lawyer or you handle trademarks or whatever it is, I mean, that really is the minimum. You do want to look around at other profiles to see how people maybe have a little bit more of a hook, and you can throw something personal in. People do all the time, employment lawyer and yoga teacher or whatever it is. But there is a chance to capture the audience very quickly there. Next is the about section, and even more so than the headline, because there you have a whole paragraph where you can tell your story. Get out what you want people to know about who you are, what you do, why you do it, and definitely consider adding something personal to that space so that people have something to connect with you beyond the professional. Also, the featured section is a great area as you're building your brand to support who you are and what you have to offer by including publications, posts, news about presentations that you've done, things that help round out your professional experience.
You want to also strengthen your brand by putting yourself in places where you can establish a following. So perhaps it's publishing articles, posting valuable content on your various social media platforms, identifying speaking engagements through podcasts and panels and webinars. These are the things that are going to help establish you as a thought leader and as one to watch in your space. They not only strengthen your brand, but they also raise your profile and they help you expand your network, meet new people, get more exposure. All of these things are helpful in moving your career, your business development opportunities forward. So wrapping up here, there's a brand you have and there right now, and there's probably a brand you want, and there may be a gap in the middle. So the whole idea is to be objective about this process and then work to bridge the gap. So I'm going to move on to this screen. You could feel free to jot down our information if you don't have it. You can reach out to us at any time. We're working on planning our programming for next month. So if there's anything that comes to mind that's interesting that you want to hear more about, you could feel free to let us know. We're going to turn off the screen share here and open up the floor for any questions.
Here we go.
We're a small group, so you could feel free
Okay.
unmute, hop in.
Here we go. Haha. Hey, Randy, it's Amy. I have a question. I just turned on
Amy.
my camera. Hi. Good morning.
Good morning.
So I got some interesting feedback from a recruiter yesterday about, or not yesterday, whatever. I'm being too detailed. She felt that for male-dominated industries, like I'm in law, so like law or finance, that you really have to be careful about what personal information or personal interests, personal attributes you put on in your brand or in your LinkedIn profile. Because I had shown her a draft of my profile and she said, no, you should never say that you like to bake. It's like too mom. So I was wondering, if anyone else had thoughts on this or any other feedback.
I don't actually agree with that. I think, what?
I said, neither do I.
Yeah. And the truth is that if somebody perceives it as too mom, you may not want to be there anyway. So there's that piece of it. But I think that if there are certain things that you enjoy doing, that it's part of what your brand is. I think it's good feedback in terms of, you want your brand and your profile to be well-rounded to a degree. So I wouldn't put baking involved in the PTA and coaching Little League soccer as, all the things that define you, even if they may be.
Yeah.
But I think including those things is relevant. It is who you are, and it does make you well-rounded. So while it may, you're going to get, there's not one consistent perception you're going to get from everyone who reviews your LinkedIn profile, right? That's not how the world works.
Yeah.
But I think including that as part of something larger, I would.
I had like one sentence at the end of my, I guess the intro, we call it, the little about me section. And it was literally one sentence. And in my defense, I'm a really good baker. I make croissants, like I'm another level. So, I saw it as more of like a little brag moment. Like I'm not just making cupcakes with sprinkles, people, like,
right. So maybe elaborate.
It was a flex. It was like a flex kind of, as my kids would say. But, it was like, don't mention, for law and finance, anything, the feedback I got was like anything home oriented or female was like a big no. And I thought that was really interesting because all the other feedback I've gotten is like, be a well-rounded person and, people hire people that you like.
So I think you also go back to that outlier, right? If enough people are giving you, you're going to get a ton of advice on this stuff, but if enough people are saying one thing, I'd probably go in that direction. The other thing you could do is elaborate on the baking, right?
Like what you just said about croissants.
Right. That's not
they suck currently. To be honest, I'm still working on them, but I make croissants, so there.
Right. No one's asking how good or not good they are, and the fact that you do it. So I think if you could say, aspirational culinary baker or something like that, that's different.
That sounds much better.
Yeah. So I think a lot of it is how you package it. To kind of veer away from the, PTA cupcake sale, if
Yeah, like PTA for law and finance, they were like, avoid like the plague. And I'm kind of like, oh, righty. Okay. Which is interesting because in my town, the PTA all has like MBAs. So,
Right. So I actually don't agree with that. Avoid with the plague. I don't actually agree with that either. I don't know if, you took time off in between?
yeah, I've always had my foot in. I had about 3 years of zero work when the kids were very tiny, but I've always been part-time.
So I think
yeah.
if you've been part-time and I actually had spoken to someone a while ago. She was at Skadden for years. She took time off. She was then at MasterCard. She took years off, but she literally, I think she was the treasurer for the PTA and had done a whole load of local work.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think that stuff is important to demonstrate, not that taking time off and raising your kids is something you ever need to defend, but I also think if you've done those things, it's relevant to share how you've spent your time. If there's details to share about it, that's relevant, right? Like if you were involved in the PTA and you were the treasurer, or if you managed all the legal documents for a local nonprofit,
yeah, I think that's valuable work. I mean, it's not just hanging out. Right. So yeah, no, it's interesting how people perceive things. So
but also, I want to echo what Randy said about if the place is a place that is going to view that negatively, and it is something that is important to you, you will forever need to be hiding or downplaying things that are important. It's not going to be a great fit. And with everything that is out there now and all the conversations that are happening about balance and the way women are perceived and all of that, frankly, Amy, I'm kind of shocked that you got that.
That's why I'm bringing it up, because I'm kind of like, that's not what I've been hearing. But I think when you are in a very male dominated field, a lot of finance tech, a lot of, with law related to that, what I did a lot. You do get like that bro culture, and how much should you kind of give into it, because, you need to fit your brand to fit you, but you also need to get clients.
I think if you write something like aspirational culinary baker, that's really different. Like however you craft it, right? Like it kind of takes away that Susie Homemaker.
Yeah, like no offense to Susie.
Right.
Yeah. Right. No, like my kids are not helping me with this project,
Right.
Anyway, cool. No, thanks for the feedback. That's good. Thank you.
We have a question in the chat from Mariko. How much can aspirational statements, what I want to do, what I want to be included in branding, in contrast to what I currently do, what I did in the past? And I actually I think you can weave in aspirational things, but I don't actually think it's part of your brand because you haven't gotten there yet. So I think it can be part of something larger, like the steps you've taken, but I don't think it can actually be the focus of your brand because it's not, right? It's not where you are. It's not who you are yet.
I think if you're creative and thoughtful about it, you probably can weave it in subtly so people can see that's where part of you is looking, or all of you is looking to go, but part of you, I mean, there generally is something foundational that leads to that aspiration. And so you want to pull those pieces out, and you can weave those pieces into your brand to kind of point you in that direction a little bit.
Like, let's go back to the employment lawyer example. If you are a management side employment lawyer and you want to do more employee side work, you can share your experience as a management side employment lawyer and kind of bridge that gap by saying, given my experience representing companies, I understand the needs of employees, and I'm now looking to take on more opportunities in that space, right? Like your foundation, like Amy said, is there. So it's a natural shift if you want to make it. Does that help?
Thank you.
Okay.
I just wanted to thank you guys. I'm Sheila, to introduce myself. Randy, I've spoken to you on the phone before. You helped me out. And Amy, I think I need your help, so I'm going to be reaching out to you.
Great.
I just want to thank you guys. It's sort of, everything I do is kind of the opposite of what we've just talked about. Somehow I've always had this very low appetite for, putting myself out there. And I'm in a position where I've been with the same company for 8 years. So even recently, I took a promotion there internally. I remember saying, oh, well, let me Google myself to make sure there's absolutely nothing about myself on the internet before a press release goes out, so they can't find anything. I'm starting to realize that's maybe not the best approach. So I appreciate everything you guys have done.
Sure. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, and Sheila, that's pretty common. There are lots and lots of lawyers in particular who they've been focused on doing good work. To your point about earning an internal promotion, being at the same company for years, like until you're confronted with something, whether it's you're realizing that you've kind of hit the ceiling and you want to make another move, or you're in a position where you need to build business, but this isn't something that is naturally on your radar because it doesn't need to be. But to have that recognition now, the great thing about it is you can always start, right? There's no barrier because you haven't done it before. Today's day one, and so we'll take it from there.
Right.
I think also the natural thing is to look at this stuff when you're in transition, whatever that looks like, right? Not while you're kind of coasting through whatever it is you're doing. I do Google myself every now and again to kind of like see what's like my tennis scores from when I played high school tennis are like still there somewhere, which it just always cracks me up. And just to kind of see what pops up and whatnot. But the more you can kind of control the narrative and create the brand you want to be out there, then when you actually want to use it because you are switching jobs or pitching business or whatever, then it's a lot easier.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Sure. Sheila, I think we had spoken, you were looking for staffing, right?
That's right.
Yeah, I remember. Yep.
That's why I want to contact Amy as well. It's looking.
We'll look forward to it.
Yeah.
I have one kind of follow-up question to Amy's. So when you talk about kind of like curating your online presence, I would say that my Facebook and Instagram is very like family focused. And then I try to keep my LinkedIn, which was also like lacking, and I'm working on getting to 500, Amy. I'm almost there. I'm working on it slowly, but I'm also in a kind of a double male dominated field. And I feel like I don't lead with like, I'm a mom, I have twins, I took 2.5 years off. And so it's how much of that, because I thought I was set to private, do you need to be kind of mindful of? Does that make sense?
So it does. And Dana, putting your family, I think Facebook and Instagram, like people expect that to be family. And I wouldn't worry about that so much. I think that is the norm and what people expect. What we were addressing more is there are people who are very vocal about their positions on things. And a great example is everything that is happening right now where people are latching on to something somebody said 10 years ago on whatever medium, Twitter, and it's coming back to haunt them because perceptions have changed or whatever it is. And so that's the kind of thing that we were addressing more. I don't think you should be putting pictures of your kids on LinkedIn, but the social media stuff that is meant for that, I've actually developed relationships with so many people that I've worked with, clients and candidates, that way. They found me on Facebook and I've watched their kids grow up. They've watched my son grow up. It's actually really nice. And that part's expected. It's that more, if you have an edge on something, you have to recognize that is discoverable as well.
Yes, I actually told my husband to simmer down, as Randy knows, on local zoning stuff. I was like, you gotta like dial it back because that's probably not ideal for us. And then one kind of follow-up question. I am very much like super together professionally and a little flaky personally. As Randy knows, like I'll forget a music class. Like people be like, why weren't you at the Zoom parents night? Because of how bad is that? So like as I'm trying to network kind of like personally, I don't know. I don't think I'm like a super flake, but I'm like flakier in my personal life, way more so than professionally. Do you think people give some grace for that and understand, or?
I think they do, but you do have to recognize the crossover, right? So if you are meeting someone or interacting with someone on a personal level, and it could end up being a professional relationship as well, you need to treat it, in my opinion, the same way you would a professional relationship. So if you would not be flaky in the business world at all, you have to be a little bit more mindful about letting things slide. Now, missing
Up here has me on a strict calendar system now. She's like, I'll help you. We'll calendar everything.
that'll work. And you know what? We all miss, especially there was a principal's coffee yesterday that I wanted to go on, and it's not exactly the same because nobody was looking for me, but I had something else that came up. And so I know they're sending out a recording. And if anybody said you missed it, it seemed like it was an important one. I say, I'm sorry, something came up. Like you don't have to admit that you flaked necessarily. You can use I had a conflict and I'm sorry that I missed it. And you move on from there. But I'm glad to hear that you've got a calendar, because the fact that it happens on the personal side, the professional side of people will still remember that. So you just have to be mindful.
Don't hold it against me, Randy, that I forgot the music class. You know, that's not me.
Wait, just a couple of things on that. This is not to say that like you're human. This is not to say like your personal life should all of a sudden feel like work. Like that you should proofread every email you send to a friend or anything like that. I think it's kind of just more to say like you have one brand and you want it to be the brand you want it to be. I can tell you with the calendar stuff, I have 3 kids, I have 3 kids too. Like I can't remember everything. And so the second I learn about it, it's on my calendar, and I have all my calendars feed to the same place. So in different colors, so I can see who has what, when, and where we're supposed to be. It's like, you just got to kind of come up with your system for that stuff. I think actually, and then back to the social media thing, I think a bathing suit is actually a great example. And you may or may not, there's no right answer. Are you okay with your prospective clients or existing clients or prospective employers seeing you in a bathing suit? And if you are not, don't put it on Facebook. And if you're like, this is my personal life, this is fine, put it on Facebook, right? Like they're going to look. So kids are different. Like you're a mom, you have kids, that is what it is. And you love that job more than any other job, I presume. And you want your employer to know, this is my life. The bathing suit, maybe it doesn't go on Facebook, right? Who knows? So like one kind of example here is when the election happened, I had my own political views on it, right? I was happy with the outcome. I have likely clients and prospective clients who probably weren't. And I was mindful of that when I wanted to make a social media post. So what I said was I think it was the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, the headline got it wrong. Kamala Harris becoming vice president should have been in larger font, right? Like that's what I hinged on, right? Like, it was like Biden wins the election, and then like the subline was, and we have our first, the whole thing. And I just said New York Times got it wrong. Like this font size should have been larger and part of the headline, right? And like that's what I kind of like hinged on very intentionally, right? Because no one can argue with that, right? And sometimes you want to take a position. I think politics are probably the place to kind of
not.
Because the truth is you're entitled to your own views, but you want those clients who have the opposing views, because the views don't necessarily matter in terms of the work you want from them, but you don't want them not to come to you because, oh, she supported Biden in this election, I'm a Trump supporter, no way. You don't want that to be in your way. You may decide not to work together for other reasons, and that may be part of it, who knows, but you don't want to kind of be stripped of the opportunity because your view is different. So if you are okay with, I'm a Biden supporter, I don't want Trump supporters, put it out there, but just know what the result will be.
I have sort of a tangent question that's kind of relates to something a little earlier in the conversation.
Sure.
Do you think it's possible? I have 2 friends with side gigs, and they're completely different than their corporate jobs. One is a professional baker who makes like wedding cakes, and the other one is a photographer that does a lot of like mom and baby maternity type photographers, but they have like day jobs. They have very strict, like vanilla corporate jobs. Is it possible to have two separate brands, like in the same person? Because we're saying, oh, it's all one, but this is like a little Jekyll and Hyde. So I'm curious.
I don't think that's having two, like, it's obviously having two like actual brands that are separate, but as a personal brand, like it's kind of back to your aspirational culinary baker thing.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's just part of who you are. It's not like you have to just be
Side
one.
hustles.
Yeah.
Give you
Yeah. It's not that you have to be, I am a corporate lawyer at a law firm and that is me. Like I'm a corporate lawyer at a law firm who's an aspirational baker, or I'm a, you know, plain vanilla finance geek at whatever company. And I also have a passion for photography.
Okay. So it's like brands versus personal brands.
Yeah. Like when we say
okay.
brands, we mean like you as like Amy Lashmet, like what is it? Your brand. And it's not one thing in a box, right?
Okay.
It's multifaceted. It is for everyone, right? Like we all have other interests, hopefully. And that's kind of what makes you unique. If everyone coming through the door was the same, it'd be a whole lot less interesting.
And the bottom line on all of this is, yes, you need to have the skills for the work that you are pursuing, but all of this brand building is really about putting an image out there that is appealing to your audience, that makes people want to work with you. Because the truth is, in 99% of the cases, right, we pick people to work with who we like. And so those side hustles and dimensions and hobbies and all of that stuff is what attracts us to each other. Like you need that baseline. Here's what you need. And I do that. But also, if we're going to meet over lunch, are we going to have things to talk about?
It is always the lunch test, isn't it?
I actually always said it was like when I was at the firm as a lawyer at the firms, it was always like, who am I going to have dinner and work through the night with? Like when we were interviewing for other associates, that was my test. I'm sure these people are great lawyers, but if I'm pulling all-nighters on these deals, who am I doing it with? That was always what it was.
That was mine too. And also, will you drive my boss crazy? That was a huge criteria.
Right. Yeah. And I actually think to the point of that recruiter who said, like, take that off. I think if you have the personal stuff on, like the baking, like it differentiates you and it creates a whole nother conversation.
Right.
Right. My father-in-law loves to bake. I love to bake. My father-in-law.
No, I agree. That's why I was.
Yeah.
David did my husband did all of the pandemic baking and cooking, quite frankly. Maybe I should be embarrassed, but I haven't made a meal since it started.
Right.
That's his contribution and he enjoys it. I don't think think the lines are what they were. I think that was a very backwards comment. I do.
Yeah.
Run with that. No, it was interesting because it was a woman recruiter too, but she knew the company pretty well and she knew the people, and it was part of a bigger conversation. But that's why I'm asking it now, because I thought it was a little weird.
I actually think that's different. If she knows the company and she knows the people, she has insight into this particular company viewing it this way. So that's probably valuable information for that one company. I think more generally, I would include it, but I would actually modify it if she has that insight.
Okay.
But also, Amy, I would give thought to
whether or not you want to be there.
And is that where you want to be? And the work might end up trumping on balance, but it is definitely something to think about. If that one line was so important to the way they perceive you, it's a little bit of a flag.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay. I mean, to follow up without naming like names or companies, we decided not to pursue that position, if only because she had some inside intel where she basically not the general counsel, I'm a lawyer for those who don't know me. I think it was the CIO was like obsessed with stealing someone from a software company, like directly from a software company, and then was rejecting all the candidates who were not like currently employed by Oracle or Adobe. And so I was like, that's a small universe, but okay, if this guy was going to be difficult and you know, it was just sort of like a bad vibe. But it was an interesting feedback, an interesting conversation, and I'm glad we brought it up here. So
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah. Anything else? No? Well, thank you guys for joining. Sheila, anything?
No, I'm just,
No?
I just want to say thank you again.
Okay. Yeah, no, our pleasure.
Thank you all for joining.
Thanks for joining. We'll circulate the recording and details for, like we said, the next one we do next month. And again, if there's any topics that have been kind of percolating for you, feel free to share them with us. And we look forward to seeing you then.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank
Great
you.
weekend.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you.